Hi, and once again, welcome to TonyWilliams.com. As I always say at the start of all my posts, I hope some of the materials that I'm able to share on this post today could get an average person like myself going from a place of good to greatness as we strive to reconstruct ourselves, build a legacy for ourselves that's obviously sustainable and will hopefully last. Now, the post I wanted to share today, ideally I would have loved to sort of be started from a Sunday, being it has a little bit of spiritual elements in there, sort of like getting in tune with our inner being and knowing who our inner being is and starting to live from that kind of perspective. Do you know, one of the reasons I started the post initially, the video blogs initially I should say, was to sort of find different ways to help people and help myself obviously, and to enable us sort of improve the quality of life that we live. You know, not that a lot of us are complaining, or not that most people are complaining, because a lot of people are comfortable and some people are actually comfortable in their own mess. But as sort of described by I think it's the hierarchy of needs by Abraham Maslow. You know, until we find ourselves at that top of the pyramid, which was his description, where we're living from a self-actualized perspective, you know, with an idea that we're fully taken care of, we don't have no problem, we have nothing to worry about, everything works for us, then I feel we are somewhere in between, you know, the very bottom and sort of the middle of the pyramid, where we would always find or have a need or two that we would want to be taken care of. And I believe for those who are at the top, the difference between them at the top and us at the bottom is sometimes just the way their mind works, you know, and what their beliefs are, you know, and also I feel like some of them, they just work from the perspective that, you know, everything in their life is an investment, and I believe that's the only way they got to the top, you know, living from this perspective that nothing in their life dies, everything is an ongoing thing, you know, nothing is a waste to them, everything that they have, you know, their time, their thoughts, their actions, their sleeping, their waking up, all of it yields investment for them, you know. And I feel also spiritually that these people at the top of the pyramid, they sort of live from a perspective where they're in tune with their inner being, you know, they know the realness of who they are. They're not the people who they live off their ego, like, you know, they're not those people who would believe in what they have is who they are. No, I think they live from the belief that their creator, or, you know, their source is the provider of their world, you know, is the one who has enabled them to reach the height of their profession. Because if you look at most of them, sort of Bill Gates, I think I read he gave away something about within the region of like 35 billion or so, and yet he's still very much on the top of on the top of scale of one of the highest paid, or one of the richest men in the world. Likewise, Mark Zuckerberg and a whole host of them. And so I feel like, you know, in order to walk our way, you know, in those basic hierarchy of needs, we need to first of all be enable ourselves to know who we are as individuals, like what is real about us. Or, we shouldn't live from the perspective that what we know, what we see, what we hear, what we can smell, determines who we are, because those are all assumptions. What we see physically, it doesn't mean it's real. What we hear doesn't mean it's real. What we read doesn't mean it's real. So what is real, and what is real that we can actually live from that perspective, so that we could, break free from all the limitations that what our literally five senses tell us. Because most of us live off of what our five senses tell us, and most of the time our five senses, they basically just lie to us, because whatever the five senses perceive, they're all assumptions. It's how we perceive it, that our mind, and we choose our minds to interpret it, that enables us to believe it. So I could look at something, I could read it, I could interpret it one way and choose to believe it that way, but it doesn't mean that's the same way how the next person will take it. Plus, my environment could shape me one way. I could decide that, okay, because I've grown up in this area of town, I'm going to act like every certain person that comes out of that area, But some people who come out of that same area might decide to act different from me. So someone who, for instance, who grows up in a slum might just think, well, the norm for everyone who comes out of a slum is to be a bus conductor, a garage tout, an agbiru, or whatever you might call it. And I could just think, for me, that's where my self-actualization is. But however, somebody else who comes out of that slum, he might see a bigger picture than where I think, the limit is for me. What is the difference? The question is, what is the difference between me and him? At least we grew, up in the same area, or were shaped by the same ethics. We probably went to the same school, or mixed around the same people. Why has he been different from mine? Why has he turned out, more better, more successful than me? We had everything but the same. It's the way we think and connect to the source that's within us. So if, in that case, if the environments, the parents, what we know, what we see, our five senses are all these things that shape us, then are they real enough for us to live on and determine that this is who we are from them? Well, my answer would be no. In that case, the question will be, what is real? You could, what is real? What is real that we could live on? And if I look at it, you might tell me you're real. I could say, yeah, I'm real. I'm a real human being. I'm real. I'll say what I want to say. I won't, I don't need to backbite. I don't gossip. That's not the definition of realness. What is real? What is real that we could live off? That could empower us. That we could cling on to. That could push us to our purpose in life, that could manifest. What is real that could manifest, that could, when we fix our thoughts and our imaginations to, we could glide off that cloud to an limitless potential. What is real? Is our knowledge real? Well, it changes every day. Is the books we read, are the books we read real? Is technology real? It's ever evolving. It's not real. And if you say you're real, well, you're not. Because you're not the same person, or you're not in the same body that you were when you were born. I wasn't born this big. So obviously I've changed. I've changed when I was a baby. I've changed when I was a teen. I've changed when I was a teenager. I'm actually changed when I'm an adult, and I'm still going to change when I grow old. So the definition of what's real, just when we look at it, comes back to one thing: the invisibleness in us. The only thing that's real, you know, if you define it properly, is that thing that never changes. And when you look at the analogies that I've left aside, you know, even human beings are not real. But within us, the shell of our bodies is not real because it's constantly changing. You know, it is constantly changing. One thing that is real though is the invisibleness, the life that's within us. You know, and that life, it comes from a source. You know, and when you now say, who is that source? Who's the source that I could connect my life to? Who's the source that, you know, I could now glide off this invisibleness? Or who's the source where I could glide off this limitlessness? Do you know, this same body, when this body dies, when the body dies, the only reason why they say this body dies is because something goes out of it. Life goes out of it. In this life that we're talking about is invisible. Nobody could see it. Not the most powerful microscopes on planet Earth. In the past, working on present, or probably going to be developed in the future. No MRI scans, no any form of not that well, it wouldn't be microscopic, but any form of powerful microscope cannot view a single element of the power of life that comes in us. It's this same life that is pumped into the ovary of an egg when a male impregnates a woman, and the egg begins to germinate and begins to sort of turn into a baby. Do you know, if a woman's a few months pregnant and perhaps, I don't know, 2 months, 3 months or so, and she decides at one stage that she doesn't want the pregnancy anymore, they tell her when she goes for a termination or abortion that she's terminating a life. They don't tell her you're terminating an egg, or you know, they probably say an unborn child. So if you terminate a child, a pregnancy at 2 months, they'll say, look, you're terminating an unborn child. Or you know, if you lose, if you lose a child lose a pregnancy at 3 months, 4 months, or whatever month before, you know, the date of birth, the delivery date, I should say, they would say you've lost an unborn child, because life, that invisibleness, no one sees it. You know, it's not the sperm, it's life that comes in and sustains that child. You know, that life that sustains that child is the life that lets the child grow from a baby to an adult, and then, you know, to a baby, to a baby, and then conceived, and then becomes an adult, and then we begin to live our life. The moment this shell drops dead, or something happens, and they declare us dead, or we finish our purpose or our journey in life, life goes about back to where it came from. You know, so that means for us, you know, the only thing that's real within us is the life that comes in. Now, if we look at it, who made life? Who gives life? as far back as we could all remember, if some of us do, the only person who gives life is God. And he's the only thing that's infinite, because life is infinite, the thing that never changes. Anything that's finite is something that comes to an end. So our body is finite, but the life within us is infinite. So it sustains us for a period of time, and it goes, which makes it more appropriate to say if life is invisible, then that means we're spirits. And if we're spirits, we're actually spirit beings on planet Earth having a temporary human experience, and we're obviously going to go off back into the spirit world. Now, who is the spirit world? Where does the spirit world come from? The Bible tells us that God is spirit, and his people would worship him in spirit and truth. When you look at the beginning of creation in Genesis 1:1, it says I think it says something like, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now, and the Spirit of God hovered over the deep. I'm sure that's what it said. But the thing I'm trying to point out is creation began from God. Because it tells you, in the beginning, God created. It never said, in the beginning, whatsoever created God. Then God created heaven and earth. No, it said, in the beginning, God created. And when he said God created, he said the Spirit of God hovered over the deep. And then God created, and God created, and God created, and God created. And then I think it's somewhere along the line, down to verse 26 or so, he said, and God said, let us create man in our image. Now, so that gives me the question, what image? Was it a black image? Was it a white image? Was it a yellow image? Was it human image? Was it grey hair? Was it black hair? Was it bald head? What image was God talking about when he said, let us create man in our image? Well, I like to submit that image was the Spirit of God. Because when you cut our flesh, when you cut our skin, the blood in there is red. The flesh is the same. The bones and all the things that put man together are all the same. Brains, eyes and everything. The only thing that's the image of God within us is his Spirit. And as human beings, if we could learn to live and recognize the power of the potential within us through the Spirit of God that lives within us, then I could guarantee you nothing is impossible. When we begin to understand and live from that perspective, you would recognize that individually we're God's. We're God's because God created us in his image. So if he's created us in his image, and the image is not our physical being, then if it's his Spirit that he's put in us, then the same power that God has to create and manifest, as human beings, we actually have that power within ourselves until we die. So that makes me think, on earth, we could begin to live to our fullest potential, enjoy all the blessings, enjoy all our desires, all our channeled imaginations, all of the assumptions, everything that we want to be, we can become in life, living off the knowledge of the source of life that comes within us. Because that source of life was the life that God gave to us, and the same life that was making him say, create this, we create this, we create this. You know, if you take it a little bit further in John 1:1, I think it is John 1, he said, and in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and he was the Word. So if God was there and he's given us the Spirit and the Word in which he speaks things into existence are the same voices we have, then we are actually complete as human beings. And we're able to do exceedingly more than our five senses could think. And that's why the power of meditation sometimes is so good, because it brings us in tune with our divine source, because we are actually divine people. It brings us in tune with it, and we're able to live and experiences that place of divine plans and purpose by just sitting silent and being in tune with our spiritual self. We are capable of doing exceedingly abundantly more than we could think or imagine. Even Jesus said, the least amongst you, these works that I do, he can do. Even greater works than I will he do. But we have to be able to recognize the power and the source of potential that's in us. Until I speak to you again next time, have a fantastic week ahead. Good night and God bless.